Hi everyone, this is Rosie, and today we're going to be making a clear view pouch that opens wide and has an expandable bottom that folds flat when not in use. So let's get started. First, let's take a quick look at the pouch. It's approximately 10 inches high by 10 inches wide, and it has a 3-inch expandable bottom. When you stand it up and open the zipper, it opens nice and wide. This is a continuous zipper. If you look inside, you'll see that all the seams are completely finished. There's no piping used inside this bag at all to close up seams, so there are no raw edges in the bag whatsoever. When you're not using it, you can pull this closed and it will lie flat for storage. I've had a lot of fun making this bag. Originally, I intended it to be for my sewing tools, my sewing projects, or for knitting or crocheting projects. But as I was making them, I realized that there are a lot more uses. It could be a craft bag for a child to carry around, and it has a wristlet strap for them to do so. You could also take out this vinyl window and replace it with mesh and use it as a lingerie bag when you're traveling. So let's go ahead and make this, and I would love to see what ideas you come up with for using the pouch. First, let's talk about some of the materials that we will need to make the pouch. For starters, I have a piece of clear vinyl here. It's 7.5 inches high by 13 inches wide, and it is a 16 gauge vinyl. I don't recommend anything thinner than a 16 gauge because it will not be strong enough. So for example, I would not use a 12 gauge vinyl for this project. I will be using 100% cotton quilting fabric for both my exterior and my interior pouch. These fabrics here are from the designer Tula Pink from her collection called Curiouser and Curiouser. For the exterior, I have 1/2 yard, and I also have 1/2 yard for my interior. You will have fabric left over from this project. Then you're going to need a fusible woven interfacing. I'm using Woven Fuse 2. And again, I have 1/2 yard of the Woven Fuse 2. Now, Woven Fuse 2 is 45 inches wide. So if you're using an interfacing that is less than 45 inches wide, for example, if it's 20 inches wide, you'll probably need about 1 yard of fusible interfacing. Then we need a number 5 zipper. A number 5 zipper has a zipper tape that's 1¼ inches wide, and it needs to be 29 inches long. Then we're going to take that zipper and pull it apart just like this. So you're going to have 2 halves. We're only going to use 1/2 of the zipper to do our continuous zipper opening. So you actually have enough zipper here to make 2 projects. Then for your hardware, you're going to need a swivel clip. This is a 1-inch swivel clip. You could use a 3/4 inch if you like. And then I have a zipper pull here that has a little hole in the opening right there on the zipper pull, and what I like to do is take my swivel clip and hook it into that opening, and that will be what holds my wristlet strap onto the pouch. Then you're going to need a zipper end cap, and that will be placed on the end of the zipper. For my thread, I'm using an Aurifil thread. It's just a general purpose sewing thread. You will need a marking tool. You will see me using a friction pen in the video. Now, when using friction pens, you want to be careful because the ink will disappear with heat, but it will come back with cold. So you only use this in an area that's not going to be seen. It's helpful to have a point turner. And then we want a seam ripper and hope that we never have to use it. You'll need a rotary cutter, some rotary cutting rulers and a cutting mat, a pair of scissors, and you want to use Wonder Clips for this project. You don't ever want to put pins into your vinyl. And it's a good idea to use a number 80 universal needle in your sewing machine. That will create a smaller hole in your vinyl. I've gone ahead and cut out all my pieces, and I'll go over the measurements with you now. From the 16 gauge vinyl, I cut out a piece that's 7.5 inches high by 13 inches wide. Then from the main fabric, I cut out 2 pieces of fabric that is 2.5 inches high by 13 inches wide, and this will be for the binding around the top of the zipper. You do not want to interface this fabric with anything. You want to leave it just as it is. Then for my wristlet strap, I cut out a piece of fabric that's 3 inches high by 18 inches wide. Now, I like to start out with a piece of fabric that's 18 inches wide for my wristlet straps, but this really is personal preference. So make it whatever length you want it to be. And you do want to interface this with a piece of the woven interfacing. Then for the bottom of the pouch, I cut out a piece of fabric that is 5.5 inches high by 13 inches wide. And again, you want to interface that with the woven interfacing. And then for the main body of the pouch, I cut out a piece of fabric that's 13 inches wide by 12 inches high. And again, that does need to be interfaced with the woven interfacing. Then for the interior pouch, I cut out a piece that is 5.5 inches high by 13 inches wide. Both interior pieces need to be interfaced with woven fuse too. And then for the main body of the interior, I cut out a piece that is 13 inches wide by 12 inches high. Next, I'll take the two pieces of my exterior and my lining that are 5.5 inches high by 13 inches wide. I'm going to flip them over and I'm going to draw in a 1/2 inch line up from each edge. And this is actually going to be my stitching line. Now, this step is optional, but I do like to have this because it helps me to get a nice straight line as I'm stitching. You want to do that to both sides of each piece. Now that I have those stitching lines drawn in, I want to sew these two pieces right sides together. But I want to sandwich the vinyl in between those two pieces. So I'll take my vinyl and I'll start by clipping it to one of those pieces. You want all of your edges to be even with each other, the side edges and the top edges. Then I'll take the second piece and put it right sides together with the other piece with the vinyl sandwiched in between. And you want to clip this all along the length. And once we have everything clipped into place, we're going to sew straight across right on top of this line here with a stitch length of 3.0. I'm sewing on a Juki Kokochi sewing machine. It is also known as the DX4000 QVP. And I will be sewing with a stitch length of 3.0, and you do want to backstitch at each end. After sewing that seam, we want to do some top stitching. So you want to take the two pieces, place them wrong sides together. I like to put a few clips in here just to hold everything temporarily in place. And then to do my top stitching, because I don't want to put an iron to this vinyl, I'll hold on to the vinyl and I will pull the fabric this way as I feed it through the sewing machine. I'm going to start that top stitching, and I am going to back stitch at both ends. Now on this side here I have the vinyl. I will lift it up with my hand a little bit so that the vinyl does not stick to the bed of the machine. And you just want to pull slightly on each side just to keep that seam flat as you sew along. Now you're going to take the two pieces that you have for the body for both the exterior and the interior, and you want to clip them to the bottom pieces. So this piece right here for the body will get clipped only to the bottom of the exterior. So get all of your edges even and clip all the way along the length. Then we'll flip it over, and you're going to take the piece, the body piece for the interior, and that is going to get pinned right sides together with just the bottom of the interior. Again, clip it all the way along the length. And once you have it clipped together, we're going to sew both of these seams with a stitch length of 3.0. Right now, you should have your exterior body clipped to the exterior bottom, and then if we flip it over, you should have your interior body clipped to the interior bottom. So basically this is what you have. It's going to be two separate seams. And now we'll go over to the sewing machine and sew both of these seams with a stitch length of 3.0. I'm starting by sewing the exteriors together, and I'm using a stitch length of 3.0, back stitch at both ends. And again, I'm just following that line that I drew in there for my stitching line. And back stitch. Then I'm just going to flip it over, and now I will sew the two interior pieces together. You'll do this exactly the way you did for the exterior. I finished sewing those two seams, and if you want to take a look, this is what you should have now. Here is the interior body. It's been sewn to the interior bottom. We have the vinyl sewn in between the two sections. Then you'll have the exterior bottom and the exterior body. Now we need to go ahead and iron these seams open flat. So you just want to go ahead and open them up and give them a good pressing with your iron, and you want to do that for both the exterior and the interior, and I'm going to do that off camera. My seams are now ironed open nice and flat, and what we want to do now is go ahead and top stitch on each side of the seams with a stitch length of 3.0. We'll do that for the exterior and for the interior. I'm going to do that top stitching with a stitch length of 3.0. I'm just going to let the edge of my presser foot ride right along that seam line there. And you do want to back stitch at both ends. Now we'll just turn it around, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. And once you have the exterior side done, you can go ahead and do the same thing on the interior side. Our next step will be to mark in some fold lines along the bottom of both the interior and the exterior. So I'm going to start with the interior side, and you have your seam line right there. You want to take your ruler and mark 1.5 inches away from that seam line, and you want to be right on top of where that seam is. Go ahead and draw a line in. And then you want to do the same thing to this side of the seam line. Make sure that you're 1.5 inches away from the seam line, and you should be 3 inches away from this mark right here. So what you should have now is a line drawn 1.5 inches away from each side of that seam. Now that we have these lines drawn in on the interior, we want to fold back on each line. So we'll start with this one here. This is going to bring the right sides of the interior together. And you want to make sure that you're right on that line, and then we're going to press it. You want a nice sharp crease here. Then when you're done ironing that first line, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to fold back on that second line that you drew in. Make sure that you're right on that line all the way across, and then you're going to press this fold in place. So what you should have now are the two folds in the interior. They're going to come together like this. We could put some clips temporarily in place there to hold everything together. Now that we have those two folds on the interior that are temporarily clipped together, we're going to fold it up out of the way, and we want to draw in another fold line on the exterior piece. So again, you're going to take your ruler and mark 1.5 inches up from that seam line. And we only need to do it on one side of the seam this time. Now, one of the reasons why I do like to mark in my 1/2 inch seam line when I sew this seam together is because it gives me a very straight seam. I don't have a wavy seam here, and that straight seam enables me to mark accurately 1.5 inches above the seam. Now that we have that line drawn in, we want to take the exterior body and bottom. We're going to put them right sides together. We want to fold it right along that seam line. Make sure that your seam is laying right along the top there. And then you can go ahead and give that a bit of a pressing. And then we want to fold up with the two sides of the exterior, right sides together. We want to fold up and press down on that seam line. And you want to make sure that you're pressing this up towards the interior of the bag. So go ahead and give it a good pressing. Again, you want a nice crisp seam here. You can go ahead and iron it from both sides if you want to make sure that the seam is nice and crisp. So what you should have now are the exterior pieces right sides together, folded up. This is the way it looks from the side. And then you should have the interior folds together, right sides of the fabric together, and this is what it looks like from the side. So now you want to take that interior piece and fold it open like this. And you want this fold here to be right along the fold line that we just pressed in. So you'll line those up. They should line right up for you. And then we're going to take the exterior piece and lay it right in here. And then this side of the fold is going to come over like this. You want to try and have the folds even with each other. And we'll put some clips in again just to hold that in temporarily. Now it is going to be a little bit bulky, but that's okay. Just clip it together. Let's take a look at what you should have at this point. We have the folds temporarily clipped together. This is my interior on the top, my exterior is on the bottom. The fold that we created in the exterior is tucked in between the two folds of the interior. Then if we turn it this way, you'll see that you have the interior body on the top. This right here is the bottom of the interior. You have your vinyl in between, and this is your exterior. All of these pieces should be even with each other. So your vinyl should be even along the sides and along the tops. And then when you fold this back over the exterior and the vinyl, all of your edges should be even. So right now we want to go ahead and pin or clip. We don't want to use pins in vinyl. You want to clip all of these edges together. And we're going to sew down each side with a 1/2 inch seam. And I am going to draw in my seam lines at this point. Now, if when you get to this point, these top edges are not perfectly even, you can go and trim them even a little bit. But if you sewed everything and cut everything correctly, they really should be even for you. So I'm going to go ahead and clip, and then we will sew these with a 1/2 inch seam and a stitch length of 3.0. I'm ready to sew my side seams. I did mark my 1/2 inch stitching line, which I'm going to follow, and I'll use a stitch length of 3.0. You do want to backstitch at both ends. Now I did start at the bottom where the folds are. And I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to sew the seam on the other side. And I always do start from the bottom where the folds are, because I don't want them to shift out of place as I'm sewing along. We can go ahead and remove these clips from the bottom now. And then you want to trim these corners. I just cut a little angle here on each side. Make sure that you don't clip through your stitching. Then after you cut those angles, you want to open this up, and you have this little piece right here. We just want to trim that down. If you want, you can go and trim down your side seams as well, but I just leave them the way they are. You're going to do the same thing on this side. Open up the seam and find that little section right there in the center and trim that down. And now that we have everything trimmed, we can go ahead and turn it right side out. So you're going to go ahead and just reach inside and push it. It will turn very easily for you. Vinyl holds up very well as you're turning. can reach in and push out these corners a bit. And then I like to take the two sides and just grab them and pull them until that comes out nicely right there. And then I'll take the two ends and pull them just like that. And I'm going to lay this flat. The interior should be wrong sides together with the exterior. And you'll just reach in there and smooth everything out. Now we're ready to prepare and sew in our zipper. So you want to go ahead and get 1/2 of the zipper tape that we separated at the beginning of the video. You also want to get your zipper pull. I have mine right here, and if you look at the bottom of it, it has one large opening. If you look at the top of the zipper pull, it has two smaller openings, one on each side of the zipper. We're going to work on the side with the two openings. You want to make sure that your zipper is not twisted, and I like to have my zipper teeth facing up. Then I simply take one side of the zipper and I'm going to insert it into the zipper pull at a 45-degree angle. Just a little bit. It's not going to go in too far. Then I take the other end of it and again I stick it in the other side, not too far. Then I'm just going to push it down, and you're either going to feel it or hear it click. And once it does, you can go ahead and pull it on the rest of the way. So here is the zipper pull on the zipper to give us that continuous zipper. Now, it does take a little bit of practice, but once you got it down, you've got it down, and you'll be able to easily put zipper pulls on your zipper tape easily. Next, you want to take the zipper end cap. It has an opening right here. And you'll take the zipper, fold back that zipper tape, just like this, and you're going to slip it into the end cap. Now the opposite side, the wrong side of the end cap, has a screw hole, so you're going to slip this into the cap, and then you're going to put the screw in on this side. Now if you don't have an end cap, you can just make a little zipper tab to go at the end of the zipper here to seal that up. I've secured that end cap on with the screw, and now what I want to do is find the center of the zipper. So I'll just pull these sides out like this, and I'll take a marking tool and mark right where the center is. Just like that. Then we can go ahead and open up the zipper, and we can start to set it into the pouch. Now you're going to go ahead and take your pouch and open it up this way, and you'll get your zipper, and you want to take that center mark on the zipper and place that right at the seam line between the fabric and the vinyl. Now you want your zipper teeth facing up, and go ahead and put in a clip on each side of that center mark. Then we're going to clip all the way around the top. Make sure the top of the zipper tape, or the edge of the zipper tape, is even with the top of the vinyl. And you'll just keep clipping all the way around here until we get to the other seam. And once you get close to the other side where the other seam is, go ahead and start clipping on this side of the pouch. And again, you want your zipper tape to be even with the top of the fabric. Now, as you get close to that seam, you want the zipper to be coming down into the pouch like this, and you want this to be at a 45-degree angle. So you'll have the zipper teeth facing up on this side, and then as it comes down into the pouch, they're going to reverse, the tape is going to reverse, so now we have the wrong side of the zipper facing up, And you want the teeth to be even with this seam right here. So it's going to form a little 45-degree angle there. And same thing on this side. As you come towards that seam line, you're going to be forming that 45-degree angle with the edge of the zipper teeth right at the edge of that seam there. After it's clipped into place, we're going to baste around the edge of the zipper 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. I'm set up to baste 1/8 of an inch away from the top of the zipper tape, and I'm going to use a stitch length of 3.0. But because my vinyl is going to get caught up on the bed of the machine, I'm just going to take a piece of copy paper and slip it right under there so that my vinyl will slide easily. And then you just baste around. Don't go 1/4 of an inch in, just go 1/8 of an inch in, and try and keep that zipper tape even with the edge of the vinyl and the fabric. If you sew over the paper, don't worry, it'll come right off. Now we're going to put on binding next, and if you want, you can sew the binding and the zipper on at the same time, but for me that's a little bit more difficult. I just have an easier time if I baste the zipper on first. After you baste in your zipper, just go ahead and close it up to make sure that everything is closing properly. Now we can go ahead and work on the binding. You want to take the two pieces that we cut out for our binding. You're going to fold each one in half lengthwise and press a crease in the center. And again, you want to have a nice crisp crease there. So do that to each piece. After you've ironed the crease on the center of each strip, you want to place them right sides together. And we're going to stitch the ends together with a 1/2 inch seam, and I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera. I stitched these two seams together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance and a stitch length of 2.5. Then I just press them open, and now we can fold the binding back again so that the raw edges are together. And then I'm just going to give it one more pressing. Now we're ready to clip the binding to the pouch. So we'll bring back our pouch. You want to open the zipper all the way. The zipper needs to be down in the pouch, just the way you basted it on, like this. And we'll take that binding, it's going to get pinned to the outside of the pouch, and you want to line up your side seams. So find the side seam on the binding and clip it to the pouch. Make sure that all of those top edges are even. And go ahead and match up the side seam on this side, and then you just want to finish clipping the binding all the way around. Once the binding is clipped into place, you want to go ahead and sew it onto the pouch with a stitch length of 3.0 and a 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to go ahead and sew that binding on 1/4 of an inch away from the top edge with a stitch length of 3.0, and again I did stick a piece of copy paper underneath that vinyl so that it doesn't get caught up on the bed of my machine. Try and make sure that all of your edges are staying even. And I'm going to backstitch here just a little bit. Now you want to take your binding and pull it up away from the seam all the way around. And we want to take the folded edge of the binding and bring it over to the other side. Now you want this folded edge to be below your stitching line. And the reason for that is because we're going to do some top stitching to hold the binding in place from this side. You want to make sure that you catch that folded edge as you're sewing around. So go ahead and clip it in place. Try and keep even spacing all the way around. And after this is clipped, we're going to go ahead and top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from this edge here with a stitch length of 3.0. I am sewing the binding on with a stitch length of 3.0, and I'm just sewing about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of that seam there. And I am sewing from the exterior side of the pouch. And yes, I do have a free arm on this sewing machine, and I'm not using it. But it is a good time to use it when you're sewing in the round like this. I'm just holding up the bag right now so that the vinyl doesn't get caught on the bed of the machine. And then just go over your previous stitching just a bit and then backstitch. To make the wristlet strap, you want to take the piece that you cut out and you want to fold it with wrong sides together and press a fold right down the center. Then you'll open it up and you want to take the long raw edge and fold it into that center crease and press it down. Then you do the same thing on the other side. You take the long raw edge, fold it into the center, and press a crease. Then you're going to take the whole piece and fold it in half so that you have the two folded edges together and press. After you have all those folds pressed into place, you'll open them up and you're going to bring the two short edges together. But before you do that, you need to put on your swivel clip. So I have my swivel clip right here. I'm just going to slip it onto one end. Then I can go ahead and open up those seams. And I'm going to sew this across with a stitch length of 3.0. And you can do it with a 1/4 of an inch seam or a 1/2 inch seam, it's up to you. And I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera. Next, go ahead and press your seam open, and then you'll fold everything back in place. And you'll bring those folded edges together again. And I like to clip them to hold them into place. I have the wristlet strap all clipped into place. It should look like this. Now we're going to go ahead and top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from each of these edges with a stitch length of about 3.0. I like to start the top stitching where my seam is, which is right here. And I have the clip above the seam so that I don't have to keep moving it away as I sew around. And again, I'm stitching with a stitch length of 3.0, 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. When you get down to where the clip is, just move it out of the way and go over your previous stitching and then back stitch. Now you want to go ahead and top stitch down the other side exactly the same way. Make sure that your clip is above your starting point. Once you're done with the top stitching, you want to make sure that your clip is on the outer side of the ring, and then I move it above that seam line there, and then I'm going to fold this back just like this, and I'll go ahead and stitch across the entire strap above the seam line. Now you can put in a rivet instead if you like, or you can sew it down in place. And you want to back stitch a few times here. Well, here's our pouch all completed. We can go ahead and close up the zipper and attach the wristlet strap. Well, I do hope that you've enjoyed watching this tutorial. I have had a lot of fun making these bags. I do have a Facebook page if you decide to make the pouch and would like to post some pictures. It's called Rosie and David's Patterns. I will link to it below. I would like to sincerely thank everyone who has liked my videos and subscribed to my channel. And if you're not already a subscriber, I would love to have you as one, so please like and subscribe.